The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Jessica Crejo with the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment and a member of your Employment First Leadership team. Welcome back to the Iowa Community of Practice. We're kicking off 2019. Happy New Year. We're so excited to be here. Before we get started, let's do a couple of housekeeping things. Hopefully most of you saw the 2019 schedule come out, but if you didn't, it's down here in the handouts, which you can find in the control panel, usually along the right-hand side of your screen. You can just double-click and download the schedule directly, and you can also download today's presentation. I might encourage you to do that. We were experiencing a little bit of lag earlier when we were doing a test run on advancing the slides. So if you want to go ahead and download Brian's PowerPoint and have it available just in case, that might be helpful. You can share any questions, comments, reactions in the chat pod, and we'll be sure to share those with Brian and get them answered as we go along. Live captioning is provided for the webinar today, and if you need that, please just give me a holler and I'll shoot you the link for that, but I can also put it in the chat pod for those of you that need it. Thank you, AMAC Accessibility with the Georgia Institute of Technology, who's providing our live captionings this season. So we're really happy to have them. Thank you for being here, and thank you for that. We will record today's webinar as well as all the webinars throughout the year, and we'll disseminate those back out along with any presentation materials and tools. If you want to access the archive of recorded webinars, you can find those on the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment's YouTube channel. Just do a YouTube search for that. You'll find the channel and you can subscribe. I would really love that. I love to see subscribers on there, but that way you'll get notifications every time a new video is loaded. You can watch those archives or participate in the live webinars to get your continuing education that you need, whether that be for your CESP or otherwise, and that includes the first 9 hours that you need or the 4 hours of ongoing education. I can provide you a certificate of attendance for participating in the live webinar. Please just shoot me an email at pruittjess@gmail.com and I'll get that over to you. I ask folks to track for themselves if they watch an archived webinar. I ask you to do that at your agency level or organization level, but I'm happy to share a template with you to help you track that if you need that. So again, just holler. I think I got everything that I can think of, but again, the 2019 schedule, we're on the third Tuesday of the month, every month through September, 1 to 2 p.m. And I think without further ado, I will open us up for our presentation today. We are so excited to have Brian Dennis with us today. He's the lead on the DEI project here in Iowa. He's a certified and experienced and expert benefits planner, and really, honestly, jack of all trades, master of most. So we're really lucky to have him today. As we know, benefits planning and building financial independence is really important and is a critical part of our role as employment professionals. And so is providing basic and accurate information around benefits, reassurance of financial advancement and or maintenance of medical coverage, and preparation and referral to a benefits planner. Because as we know, when it comes to public benefits and work, there's a lot of fear and confusion, and often the rule, and that's often the rule. So it's important that we, again, provide accurate information. You don't have to be an expert, but Brian's going to give you a lot of great information today because you have many opportunities to help spread that accurate information and encourage work while directly supporting people in finding a job that's a good match for them, building their businesses. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Dennis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Jess, for that introduction. Your check is in the mail. So again, my name is Brian Dennis, and I, as Jess said, wear quite a few hats. I am the current co-lead for the Disability Employment Initiative, which is a DOL and ODEP funded grant to assist persons with disabilities move to education and ultimately into employment. I'm also a certified benefits planner, so I'm here today. And my real goal here is to provide some information. So there's a lot of misinformation about benefits planning, and it can seem really complicated and really mysterious, and there are different steps to it. So my goal over our time together is to hopefully remove some of the mystery and give you some concrete examples. You will not be an expert on this stuff when we get done. I've been doing this for several years, and I don't think I know it all. In fact, there's new stuff to learn all the time. We're at the beginning of a new year, so the numbers and all those things just changed. So there's always a learning curve. But my hope is to remove some of the mystery, to get rid of some of the common misconceptions, and to give you a person that you can contact with questions. So it is far more important to me that we get some knowledge dispersed over our time than to get through the entire presentation. I'm going to do my level best to do that. I think I can. But please, please, please feel free to use the chat box, ask questions as we go. If you have something super specific to a person, all my contact information is at the end of the presentation. That may be something that you want to contact me either via email or a phone call. But if you have a general question or ask me to clarify something, please don't hesitate. Don't wait till the end to do that. Feel free to jump on it at that moment. So let's go ahead and get started. As Jess said, there's a lag, so hopefully it won't be significant. And if there is any disruption, Jess will let me know. So first off, let's start off with a quiz. And I'm actually having a lag going through the very first slide. So we're going to see if we can move forward here. Our technology is not being a fan of ours today. Okay, let's try it again. There we go. Okay, so let's start with some true-false questions. All of these are actually questions that I've had in my time being a benefits planner. So true-false. On disability, I can only have $2,000 in the bank. If I make more than $1,000 in a month, I'll lose my disability benefits. I have to keep at least $1 of SSI to keep my Medicaid. I have to report my tax refund to Social Security. The rules of SSI and disability are the same. And if I lose my benefits, either disability or SSI, I have to do a new application. Well, the answer for every single one of those questions, except for the last one, is false. And then the last one, while the true answer is it depends, more often than not, the answer for the final question is also false. As we get through the presentation, I'll explain why those are the answers, and we'll have to review them at the end. So first up, the big question when it comes to benefits. People want to know if they'll lose them. And it's really important to understand that when you're on disability, when you're on SSI, and some folks are on both, that you really have two benefits. You have your cash benefits, your money that you live off of, and then you have your health care, your health insurance. For a lot of folks, when they get their cash benefit, that's also when they qualify for their insurance, be it Medicare or Medicaid. So a lot of times the thought process is if one goes away, so does the other. That's actually not true. So once you're on disability, once you're on SSI, it's really important to understand that the cash benefits and the health insurance, while they come to the individual together, they actually can be functioning very separately. And if a person moves where they no longer get their cash benefit, they still typically keep their health care coverage. Social Security is not all-knowing, all right? That's a shocker, I'm sure, to most folks listening on the phone. Social Security is not all-knowing. In fact, if you have a benefits question, Social Security is typically not the first folks you go to. And I don't mean this sarcastically. Social Security serves millions of people all across the country. And when you go into the office to talk to someone from Social Security, typically you're talking to someone that their primary question that they answer has to do with Social Security retirement. So these folks don't deal with questions about disability and SSI as often they do with retirement. So that's not necessarily in their wheelhouse. However, that's a great time to start off with a benefits plan. There's several in our area. To start, how does this happen with my benefits? I got a job, I got a letter, I'm not sure what this means. To start with the benefits planning, you typically will have to involve Social Security, but it's usually a really good idea to start with a benefits planner. Also, the decision of Social Security to make is based on what individuals tell them. So if folks are giving Social Security either inaccurate or outdated information, the answer that Social Security gives you is going to be inaccurate. And if you've ever gotten one of those letters from the Social Security Administration, they already are pretty confusing, even with the best of information. If we're not helping Social Security by giving them good info, those letters, those decisions are really going to be inaccurate. This is just to show you sometimes the complication when it comes to helping folks that receive benefits. Because what you see on the screen, hopefully, is Social Security's definition of having a disability, which is the inability to engage in any substantial gainful activity by reason of any medically determinable physical or mental impairment, which can be expected to result in death, or which has lasted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. That is a mouthful. And it honestly doesn't really tell you how Social Security looks at a person receiving benefits or what it takes to have a disability in the eyes of Social Security. This is really a systemic barrier. Folks get told lots of ways that they have a disability, lots of different sources, and the rules sometimes are kind of fluid. I hear this a lot in the work that I do. Social Security says I'm 100% disabled, I'm totally permanently disabled. That really isn't Social Security language. That's stuff you'll hear from workers' comp, you may hear it from the VA, but that's really not how Social Security looks at disability. Social Security really looks at disability as your ability to work while experiencing some type of physical or mental impairment. So the easiest example I can give you is using a celebrity. I'm assuming most folks that are listening have heard of Stevie Wonder, the singer. Well, Stevie Wonder, besides being an entertainer, also experiences blindness. If Stevie Wonder went to the Social Security Administration today and applied for benefits, they would say he's not disabled. They would say that he has an impairment. He has a visual impairment, but he's able to do his job. He's able to obtain employment that makes him not only a livable income, the man's a millionaire. So when individuals are looking at moving to employment and they get a letter or a question from Social Security, it is not the Social Security saying that they're no longer disabled, meaning from a medical standpoint. They're looking at it from the idea of, can you make enough money through a job that you no longer need benefits? So for the rest of the presentation, we're going to talk about how they look at that money, how they apply it, and where some of those benchmarks are. So when you're going back to work, believe it or not, Social Security actually wants individuals who receive benefits to move to work. And they have lots of policies and procedures and rules that actually makes moving back to work a somewhat orderly process if you understand how those rules work. So that's what we're going to do today, is try and explain how those rules work. First up, when you're on Social Security benefits, they have a couple different disability programs. One is Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI. The other is Supplemental Security Income, also called SSI. And as I said earlier, some folks actually receive both, and those folks are called a concurrent beneficiary. Here's a really quick overview of how those programs work and the differences between them. First off is really the different forms, which is the second bullet point. If you receive Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, that is true disability, okay? That is when people say they're on disability, that is the program that we're talking about. Oftentimes folks get disability and SSI confused. They call everything disability, but truthfully getting SSDI is the true disability program. When you're on SSDI, that's a program that you get, that's an entitlement program based on insured status. What that means is that someone, usually the individual receiving the benefits, but not always, someone has worked and paid into the system to generate a disability check. Typically, the best way to look at it is disability is like hitting fast forward on getting retirement. There's really three forms of disability. There's SSDI, which means that the person's receiving the benefit worked, acquired a disability, and then they're drawing that money down. But you can also draw off of other people. The most common one that we probably see in our work is what's called Childhood Disability Benefit, or CDB. That means that an individual is drawing their disability benefit from a parent. The way the rules work for that is that if an individual experiences a disability before the age of 22, does not mean that they're on benefits before 22, but that just they have a diagnosis before age of 22, and then that parent has either, then at least one of their parents has died, received disability themselves, or retired, they can draw benefits off of that parent. So some of us may work with individuals who are really young and they get a really high disability benefit because, again, they're drawing off of a parent. You can also draw off of a deceased spouse because of what's called disabled widower's benefit. Again, a lot of the work that we do, we don't see many of those, but you may run into that occasionally. If you're on disability, that comes with Medicare. The amount of the benefit varies. It depends on what the person was earning when they were working. So a quick pop quiz on that is, if you have two people that are on disability, one was working as a cashier and one was an attorney, and they start getting disability benefits, the attorney, you would assume, gets the bigger check because the attorney would have most likely made more money than someone who works as a cashier. So you get a huge variance when it comes to disability benefits. One of the quick ways to know if someone is on disability, though, is when do they get their check? When does their money comes in? And if you're on disability, it is usually received on the 3rd of a month. It typically comes on the 3rd of a month or a certain Wednesday in the month. And usually Social Security counts this money when it's received. Some offices count it when it's earned, but typically they count the money when it's received. The other funds are SSI benefits, supplemental security income. That is a needs-based program. We'll talk about how these programs work when it comes to working here in a moment. But in Iowa, if you're on SSI, you automatically get Medicaid or Title 19. The one thing I'll say that is an Iowa rule. Most states have the rule that if you receive SSI benefits, you automatically get Medicaid. But not every state has that rule. So if you're serving someone and they're looking at moving out of state, it would be a good idea to do a little research or advise the individual or someone that's supporting them to see if you're moving from Iowa to, let's say, Tennessee, does Medicaid come automatically with SSI benefits? Again, about 34, 35 states in the country have the rule that if you're on SSI, you automatically get Medicaid, but not every state. So it might be useful just to make a phone call. SSI money comes on the 1st of the month, typically, and this income is always counted when it's received. So the money is counted in the month you actually receive your paycheck. So let's talk about how the different programs work. First up is disability, or SSDI. The couple things to really understand with SSDI, the SSDI is an all or nothing program. And what that means is this: if an individual is on disability and they get a job, they're going to be in one of two circumstances. They're either going to receive every cent of their disability benefit plus their paychecks, or they're just going to receive their paychecks. I'll say that again. If someone is on disability and they're working, they will either receive every cent of their disability check. Let's say it's $900. They'll receive their $900 disability check plus whatever they earn from their job, or they'll just get the money from their paychecks. And we'll talk a bit about how Social Security makes that determination. When you're on disability, you go through three phases when it comes to how your benefits are impacted by having a job. One of those phases is called the trial work period. The second one is the extended period of eligibility. And then the third is what's called expedited reinstatement. I'm going to go through these a little quickly just for time. If you have someone and you're trying to figure out what process they're in or how this is, you have more questions for more detail, please don't hesitate to give me a call. First up is the trial work period. The trial work period, or TWP, is what everyone initially goes through when they first get a job after getting on benefits. What I mean is this. If someone's been on benefits for 6 months and they get a job, they're in their trial work period. If someone's been on benefits for 20 years and then they get their first job after benefits, they still start in their trial work period. When a person's in their trial work period, they get a 9-month period of time where no matter how much money they make, nothing happens to their benefits. So they can make as much money as they want to, they can make as much money as they can, and their disability benefit will not be impacted. And I want to stress that. When a person's in their trial work period, I like to use the analogy of think about it like a house. When you're in your trial work period, the house doesn't have a roof. There's no amount of money that will cause your disability check to go away. If a person made $1 million in a month, literally, they would keep their disability benefits. All right? But while trial work period doesn't have a maximum limit, it does have a minimum amount of money you have to make to even say that you're using up one of your trial work period months. That amount of money is $880. And that amount of money is before taxes. That's a common question that comes up. Is a Social Security count my income before or after taxes? Unless you are self-employed, Social Security counts your money before taxes. They count the gross, not the net. I also noticed a quick typo in the presentation. On the previous slide, it said that the income to use a trial work period month is $850. That's an error. That was the amount for 2018. The number on this slide is correct, which is $880. So let's explain how 880 works. When someone is in their trial work period, we'll say it's Jess. She's helping us out today. If Jess gets a job and she's working, she has to make at least $880 to use one of her trial work period months. So if Jess's job is paying her $1,000, $1,000 is more than $880. So if Jess has her 9 trial work period months, what happens is this. In the month of January, if Jessica makes $1,000, she goes from having 9 trial work period months down to 8. She just used up a month. If in February, she does the same thing, makes $1,000 from her job, she uses another trial work period month. So she goes from having 8 trial work period months down to 7. Then we get to March. And Jessica's going to take some time off work due to spring break. Maybe there's a slowdown. Maybe something happens. She loses her job. It does not matter. But if she makes less than $880, that can be $700. It can be $30. It can be nothing. But if she makes under $880 when she gets to the month of March, she started with 7 trial work period months, she still has 7 trial work period months. So when a person in their trial work period, the months do not have to go in a row. They are just, whenever a person hits whatever that limit is for the year, that takes away a month. Some folks I've worked with use up their 9 trial work period months the first 9 months that they have a job. Others, it takes years. Others, it never happens. It's really individualized. But the idea is that when you're in your trial work period month, when you're in your trial work period, no matter how much money you make, you will keep getting your disability benefits. When your trial work period is up, the very next month starts what's called the extended period of eligibility, whenever that is. By the way, if you're serving someone that's worked in the past, you're not sure, maybe they've used some months, maybe they haven't, I'm unsure, that is when you contact the benefits planner. A benefits planner has the ability to do a benefits planning query, which lets us pull the information from Social Security that will say how many months a person has used or not. So if you're needing some more in-depth detail, please reach out to a benefits planner. And again, my information is in this presentation. But whenever a person's trial work period month ends, and that's really where we start, because that sets the tone for everything else. When a person's trial work period months are over, the very next month starts a person's extended period of eligibility. So if a person's trial work period ends in January, their extended period of eligibility begins in February. If a person's trial work period ends in July, their extended period of eligibility starts in August. If a person's trial work period ends in December, January starts their extended period of eligibility. It's just the next month on the calendar. When a person is in the extended period of eligibility, The rules change when it comes to income. This is where people sometimes go, how much money can I earn before I lose my disability benefit? That idea is what's called substantial gainful activity. Substantial gainful activity, if you go all the way back to when we're talking about the definition of getting on benefits, is the amount of money that Social Security thinks you can earn and be self-sufficient. Now, we can argue whether or not that amount of money makes a person self-sufficient, but Social Security looks at substantial gainful activity, or SGA, as a signal that an individual can potentially live off of their benefit, live off of their job and not their benefits. So Social Security has two different numbers for substantial gainful activity, and it depends on if you experience blindness or not. If a person is not viewed as blind in the eyes of Social Security, then that person's income limit is $1,220, $1,220, again, before taxes. If a person experiences blindness, they have a higher SGA. That amount of money is $2,040 per month, again, before taxes. This means that if you're making under this amount of money, you keep your cash benefit. Before I go on any further, I always like to stress to people, I'm not advising folks to work under SGA. The SGA number is just kind of a trigger. It's an idea that a person may be earning enough money that they don't need their benefits. But folks really need to think about it before they do something like artificially lower their income. People should really work to a point that they are able to get self-sufficient, but they should meet with a benefits plan and also talk about the possible impact on their benefits. If a person is making substantial gainful activity or more, then they will potentially lose their cash benefits. But that's only after what we call a grace period. Let me explain what that means. We'll go back to our example with Jess. So Jess has been working for a while, and she's used up her trial work period. Now, if Jessica is still making $1,000 at the end of her trial work period month, she'll move into her extended period of eligibility, and nothing's going to happen to her benefits. She'll keep working her job, and she'll get her disability benefits every month, and she'll have her money from her job. Nothing will happen, okay? But let's say that Jessica gets a raise at work, and she starts making, let's say, $1,300, all right? Well, when Jessica makes more than substantial gainful activity the very first time, what's going to happen is she's going to trigger a grace period. Well, that grace period means that Social Security is going to guarantee her next 3 checks. I want to stop for a moment and explain what I mean by that. Social Security, when they pays you a month behind if you're on disability. So what that means is for individuals who got disability this month, when they got their check in January, that was their December money. When folks get their disability checks in February, that is their January money. So when Jessica makes enough money to trigger her grace period, what that means is that it's going to guarantee her next 3 benefits checks that she's eligible for. So if Jessica's grace period month was January, February, and March of 2019, that means it's going to be the check she received in February, March, and April. I know that can be a little confusing, so I'll say it again. If Jessica's grace period months are January, February, and March, what that means is it's the check she received in February, March, and April. If you have questions about how that works, again, it's a good idea to talk to a benefits planner. Once Jessica has finished her grace period months, the next thing that happens is this. The next time that Jessica makes more than substantial gainful activity, Social Security is going to cease her check, or at least they should. Now, let me explain what cessation means. So Social Security has a couple terms that sound the same, especially if they write them in a letter, but they mean 2 different things. Cease basically means this. You're making enough money that we don't need to send you your disability benefit, but it does not mean that you're no longer on the disability program. What that means is, let's say we get to the month of June, and Jessica made enough money in June that she would not get her July check. If we get to the month of July and her income drops under substantial gainful activity, her check comes back in August, okay? That's how it works. Folks can go on and off their benefits depending on how much they're making a given month, and the process is actually pretty automatic. But you do need to make sure that you're reporting your income to Social Security. Also, while you're in your extended period of eligibility, Your health insurance, be it Medicare or Medicaid, does continue. One more thing about these three processes is this. A person cannot be terminated by working when they're either in their trial work period or in that extended period of eligibility. It's only once both of those time frames are over. They've used their 9 months of trial work period and they've used their 36 months of extended period of eligibility. Once a person makes substantial gainful activity or more, the next time, then Social Security would terminate them. However, from the month that they're terminated, which is why it's very important to keep any letters you get from Social Security, once you're terminated, you have a 5-year window of what's called expedited reinstatement. And what that means is that after you've been terminated, if any time in the next 5 years or 60 months, your income drops to where you should be able to get a disability benefit, then what you need to do is you just go to Social Security, you identify yourself, you give me your Social Security number, you tell me the expedited reinstatement, and as long as you have the same or related disability, you can get your benefits back without doing a new application. They do have you do a little bit of paperwork to basically get medical documentation, but it's not a new application. It's just verifying that you still have the same disability as you had when you were on benefits, but you do get your benefits back. So there is no need for a new application. And it's also a fairly quick process. Social Security also has a few other work incentives that really assist people when they're working. Because there's a difference between the amount of money that you get from Social Security versus the amount of money, there's a difference between the amount of money you earn from a job and the amount of money Social Security actually counts. So a couple ones that are really significant for folks are what we call impairment-related work expenses. You may see we shorten everything to their acronym, so we call those IRWEs. And that is any out-of-pocket expenses you use for your job, especially related to health care. So if you can see on the screen, there's a long list of different services that folks can pay for. The two most common ones are anything that you pay to a pharmacy or anything you pay to a doctor's office. If you use Flex as part of your employment, they work sort of similar to that. So if a person is making, let's say, $1,300 from their job, but they have $200 in doctor's visits, co-pays, or money at the pharmacy, or things of that nature, then with receipts, Social Security says you didn't really make $1,300 because you paid $200 out of medical expenses. So instead of $1,300, what you made was really $1,100. $1,100 is under $1,220, so a person would still keep their disability benefit. They just need to make sure that they send in those receipts when they're reporting their wages. Another one are what we call subsidies or special conditions. Now I'll go over them really, really quickly. A subsidy is when you get any type of extra assistance at work. So let's say a person doesn't do parts of the job due to an accommodation. That may be due to a physical disability, it may be due to mental health concerns, but let's say there are 10 pieces of my job, there's 10 duties as part of my job, and because of a disability, I do 7 of them, or 3 of them that I don't do. What that would mean is that I'm actually earning, in quotation marks, 70% of my income. So with a statement from the employer, I get a subsidy about 30%. So what that really means is every time I report my wages, Social Security wouldn't count 100% of what I'm earning. They would count 70% of that. And if that calculation brings my income under 1220 or 2040, then I keep my benefits. It does not impact 1 cent that a person actually earns from their job. It just reduces the amount of money that Social Security counts. The other one is what's called a special condition. And that means that there's some type of additional support that exists to help me keep my job. And that can be a variety of things. We're going to talk about the most common special condition that we have. And the most common special condition that we have is job coaching. So any individual that receives a job coach actually works receiving a special condition, and they can actually subtract the value of the job coaching from their wages. I'll go over this really briefly in how Social Security does that calculation. So if I'm working a job, and let's say I make $10 an hour, and I have a job coach who makes $12 an hour. Let's say for a moment that job coach serves me 10 hours a week. The way Social Security would say the value of the job coaching isn't what the job coach makes per hour, it's what I as the client make an hour. So if I make $10 an hour and my job coach serves me 10 hours a week, that's $100 a week that Social Security will subtract from my wages. As long as there's documentation of that the job coach actually served me during that month, I can subtract the value of their job coaching from my wages. Again, does not change how much money I actually make, but it does reduce the amount of income that Social Security counts. A couple other things when it comes to insurance. If you're on disability, you also will qualify for Medicare benefits. When a person is on disability, even if they work themselves off of the disability benefit, they can maintain their Medicare. A person continues getting Medicare for 93 months, which is 7 years and 9 months after their trial work period, if they've worked themselves off of disability benefits. And at the bottom, hopefully you're seeing it's the two different versions of Medicare cards that are out there right now. Social Security is transitioning to new cards, so hopefully you see the new card, which is the one on the right side of the screen. What you see is just the medical benefits when it comes to Social Security, when it comes to the different forms of Medicare, just to educate you. So Part A is to cover anytime you're in the hospital for at least 24 hours. That part is free. Part B is for less than 24-hour visits, doctor's offices. Part C are discount cards that they were using for prescription drug coverage. They really don't use that much anymore. And Part D are the true prescription drug plans. Hopefully folks are familiar with MEPD, which is a valuable resource to use for folks who are on disability and or SSI and are working. The big thing about that it raises the resource limit. So a person goes from having a resource limit of $2,000 for Title 19 to having $12,000 limit for Title 19. By the way, when you're on disability, the only money that Social Security counts is your money from work. Social Security, now this is not necessarily DHS, but if you're on disability, the only money Social Security counts is your money from your job. So if the individual is married, their spouse's wages does not matter. It does not matter how much money they have in the bank, how many cars they own, how much property. If a person was to win the lottery, literally, they would maintain their disability benefits. It would impact things through DHS, but it would not impact disability. Next up is the SSI program. So SSI is a needs-based program. It's paid out of our general tax dollars, but it's really meant to give a person enough money for basic food and shelter. And again, in Iowa, it comes with Medicaid. Those are some of the basic eligibility for Medicaid, as well as taken to the Medicaid website. The big thing about Medicaid is Medicaid has a set maximum amount of money. So if an individual in 2019 receives SSI, they receive $771 or less if they're an individual. If they're part of an eligible couple, which means that both individuals in the couple receive SSI benefits, then that couple receives a total of $1,157. So if you're doing the math in your head right now, if you have two individuals that receive SSI, and they are considered individuals, they each get $771. If those two people become a couple, say get married, their total benefit goes from a little over $1,400 to a little over $1,100. Now, I'd never advise individuals not to get married. However, if you have two individuals who are both receiving SSI and they are considering doing things such as getting married, moving in together, not as roommates, but as a couple, having both their names on bank accounts, both their names on leases or mortgages, you have to be careful there because you can be considered an eligible couple. And if you're considered an eligible couple, there is a large change in your monthly benefits. It's also very difficult to get change back if it occurs. The income that impacts SSI. When I was talking about disability a moment ago, I pointed out that things that were unearned income does not affect SSI. So if you're on, does not impact disability. However, if you're on SSI, almost all income impacts SSI. So unearned income. So if a person was receiving VA benefits, unemployment, FIP, things of that nature, it will impact their SSI benefits. Pretty much dollar for dollar. If a person is working, that has an impact on their benefits, or they're getting in-kind support and maintenance, which means that someone else is providing for their food and shelter. That's not a program. That can also impact their benefits. If a person receives unearned income, here's a listing of the income that's taken away from their SSI benefit, almost dollar for dollar. So if folks are receiving disability benefits, VA, workers' comp, unemployment, child support, you see the list. Those types of benefits are subtracted from an SSI check, almost dollar for dollar. Things that are not considered income under SSI. Basically, anything that cannot be used to obtain food or shelter, or any type of programmatic assistance. So, if they receive a housing subsidy, so they're either on Section 8 or public housing, or any type of subsidy that helps pay for their rent, that does not impact their benefits. Food stamps does not impact their benefits. Tax refunds don't impact their benefits. And you can see the other things, such as proceeds of a loan, clothing. There is a resource limit on SSI. So the resource limit is $2,000 by the last day of a given month if they're an individual. If they're part of an eligible couple, it's $3,000. Again, if the person receives MEPD, those limits go up by $10,000 apiece. Here's a list of some common exclusions when it comes to resources. The most common resources, though, are things through DHS and housing. Any type of programmatic assistance typically is not considered a resource when looking at SSI beneficiaries. For time, I'm going to go quickly into how SSI is impacted by working, because I'm sure that's what a lot of people want to know. So if you're looking at the screen, here's a really quick calculation, and I use the numbers that I use because it makes my math easy to show you how SSI is impacted by a person's job. This assumes that the only income that a person has is their SSI benefit and their wages from work. So let's assume that a person makes $885 a month from their job, again, before taxes. Social Security doesn't count the first $20 from any given month, what they call a general exclusion. There's another $65 that Social Security doesn't count because it's a job. So if a person's working and receiving SSI, basically they can make $85 from their job before Social Security does anything. After $85, so in this example, we have $800 left over. Social Security counts half of that. So half of $800 is $400. And they basically take $400 away from the SSI check that the individual is receiving. So if they're receiving their full benefit, $771, Social Security is going to reduce their check to $371. However, this is where some folks get nervous. However, remember that if a person is working, they still have other income. So if a person's SSI check goes down to $371, but they're still working, you can see that before taxes, they have a little over $1,200 coming into their household. This is one of the few absolutes that I get to say. On the SSI program, if you get and keep a job, you always have more money in your pocket. And I like to say that twice. If you're on SSI and a person obtains and maintains employment, they always have more money in their pocket. However, that SSI check can and will be reduced by working. That reduction, though, happens 2 months later. The reason that it's a 2-month lag is that Social Security understands that because a benefit check comes in at the first of the month, that even if you run down your pay stubs, you're not going to be able to report in time. So they give it a 2-month lag. So what that means is if a person's working in January, their income affects their March check. If a person gets paid in February, the income affects their April check. Also, if you're on SSI and you get a job, while it takes Social Security 2 months to reduce your income or reduce your SSI check, if you lose that job, it'll take them 2 months to raise it back up to the 771. So always try and help people maintain their employment as much as possible. And at the bottom, you can see down there, for a person's check to go all the way down to zero, they have to make at least 1627 for that check to zero out. If their check actually goes down to zero, a person gets a 12-month in a 12-month period of time before their SSI is actually terminated. Which means if a person's on SSI and because of their job, their SSI check goes down to zero, they're still on SSI, they're just not getting a check. They have to go 12 consecutive months to no longer get an SSI benefit, to no longer be on the SSI program. So if a person goes 10 months with zero check, and the next month, for whatever reason, they're eligible for, let's say, a $5 SSI check, and then the following month after that, so I go from now to October without any SSI money. In November, I get a $5 SSI payment. And then in November, I go back down to zero. The month of November is month one all over again. The 12 months have to be consecutive. And even if a person goes to 12 straight months without any SSI benefits and they're terminated, they also have the same expedited reinstatement period that disability does. There's also an amount of money that you can make and still qualify for your Medicaid, even if you're not on SSI cash benefit. As you can see, that number is a little over $33,000. And for folks who really have medical costs, that income can be raised up a bit. Here are some common work exclusions. I'm going to go through these quickly because I want to leave time for questions. So if you're on SSI, here are some common work incentives. One is the student earned income exclusion, which actually, if you're under age of 22 and you're going to school, you can see you can make quite a bit of money each month and for the year that Social Security completely does not count. If a person experiences blindness, there are additional costs that they can count that Social Security allows them to take away from their income. One of the big ones is paying taxes. Individuals can do a PASS plan, which is the idea of saving money for a certain goal to help them with obtaining and maintaining employment. There's several things that an individual can write a PASS plan for. I would say the most common PASS plan application that I get asked to assist with is purchasing vehicles. And then if you receive both SSI and disability, all of those work incentives I just mentioned apply to the individual. That is really when you need to contact a benefits planner because, A, when you are on both benefits, you may work and one benefit may be impacted and one benefit may not. If you're curious why a person may get both benefits, here is the reason why. When a person applies for benefits, the first thing that Social Security does is see if the person can qualify for a disability benefit, a disability check. Some individuals do get a disability check, but it's a small amount of money. So let's say a person receives a $500 disability benefit. A $500 disability benefit is actually under the amount of money that a person would get for SSI. SSI gives you $771. So what Social Security does, they give you both benefits. They give you the disability benefit, and they will also give you SSI to make up the difference between what disability is giving you and what SSI should pay you. In fact, it actually gives you a bit of a bump where you have to get about $20 more than what a person on SSI would be. So if someone is on SSI, they get $771 a month maximum. If someone's on both disability and SSI, they actually get $791 total. But again, the benefits also bring the dual work incentives and dual rules. You definitely want to make sure you contact a benefits planner. I'm not going to talk much about Ticket to Work other than to say that it is an additional service that can be really beneficial to help individuals move to employment. So if you have an interest in Ticket to Work, please feel free to contact me. And there are some benefits to assigning your ticket. Primarily, the idea is that You get free from having a continuing disability review, and by working with an organization that holds your ticket, you also can help create additional funding for services for other individuals. Few things to remember: everyone can work. You can work and maintain your benefits. The transition off can be gradual and timely. You can maintain your health insurance, and you always need to report your wages to Social Security and get documentation of that. I have tools for pretty much everything I mentioned. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you're wanting assistance with ways to report to Social Security, apply for a subsidy, do a PASS plan, a variety of things. So here are those true false, and then we'll turn over for some questions with our time we have remaining. First off, on disability, I can only have $2,000 in the bank. This only applies to SSI recipients, and it can be raised if you receive MEPD. If I make more than $1,000, I'll lose my disability benefits. This is referring to SGA, which for this year is $1,220 if you are non-blind and $2,040 if you experience blindness. I have to keep $1 in my SSI to keep my Medicaid. That is not true. Even if you go down to zero benefits, you can make up to $33,261 for the year and keep your Medicaid. I have to report my tax refund to Social Security. You do not. Disability does not count what they call unearned income, and that's what a tax refund is. And SSI would account the money that generates your tax refund when you earned it. The rules for SSI and disability are the same. They most definitely are not. Hopefully that's what this presentation has taught you. And if I lose my benefits, I have to do a new application. You do not. If they're lost by working, you only have to do a new application after you have tried the expedited reinstatement process. The last pop quiz before we turn over to questions with the time we have remaining is this. How do you know which benefit a person is receiving, or if you receive benefits, how do you know which one? First off, when does a person typically get their paycheck from disability? From Social Security, excuse me. If their check typically comes on the 1st, they receive SSI. If it comes on the 3rd or a certain Wednesday, they're on disability. How much is their benefit? If it's $771 or less, it's SSI. If it's more than $771, it's going to be disability. And finally, how many checks does a person receive? If they have one check, they receive either disability or SSI. If they say they get two, then they're concurrent, which means they get both, SSI and disability. Well, I hope that overview was at least informative and received some of the mystery, but I want to turn this over now for any type of questions that we have from folks that were listening.
Thanks, Brian. So the first question that came in is back to the CDB, the childhood death. Mm-hmm. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Is there an age cutoff to that particular benefit?
No, there's a minimum age. So let's say a person is 40 years old. If a person can show that they experience a disability before 22 or younger, then they still would qualify for the childhood disability benefit. A common example of this is sometimes individuals receive SSI benefits, and then they'll have a parent that retires, gets on disability themselves, or unfortunately passes away. And what Social Security will do then is that when they see that death record come through, they'll do a match on the Social Security numbers, and oftentimes they will just move you over to disability through the childhood disability benefit. So I get calls occasionally where folks go, well, I was getting $700 one month, and now I'm getting $2,000. What happened? And when you do a little investigation, you'll find that maybe a parent just retired. Also, there was a little bit of warning. If a person receives the childhood disability benefit, no matter how old you are, Social Security considers you a child. Let's say, again, you're 40 years old. In the eyes of Social Security, children cannot get married. So if a person receives childhood disability benefit and they get married, that childhood disability benefit goes away and you can never get it back. because you've been married once. So if a person receives a childhood disability benefit and they get married, and this actually happened to a customer that I'm aware of, a person was on childhood disability benefit, they got married, the marriage didn't work out, they got divorced. The benefit that they got was now SSI because they didn't have enough work history to get disability on their own. So they went from getting about $2,000 in childhood disability benefit to nothing because they got married, down to the SSI benefit once they were divorced. So, other questions?
Yes. When can you include transportation cost in an IRWI?
Typically, if there is out-of-pocket specialized transportation, you can count it. Also, if there is an inability to utilize public transportation. So if you have an individual that, the most common example I've had is a person experiences a seizure disorder, and because of that, due to a doctor's recommendation, they did not use public transportation due to the walking from the nearest bus stop, so they would pay for a taxi. They can then use the cost of that taxi for that. So anytime they use any specialized transportation out of pocket, if a person experiences blindness and they have a driver, they can also count it as an IRWI.
Thank you. Well, and I'm glad you used that example of a driver, and you specifically, it makes sense for somebody that maybe is experiencing a visual impairment or blindness. But what if an individual does not access or cannot access public transportation? Let's say they're in a rural community or it's just not very accessible for them, and maybe they do employ somebody as a driver or
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. Out of pocket, or if they hire somebody to kind of be their driver, that could count?
Yes.
Okay.
That could count. The only thing that sometimes Social Security asks is there a reason that the individual does not drive themselves? So I have seen Social Security occasionally ask, is the reason that Brian hires a driver, is it because he cannot drive himself or chooses not to? So sometimes if they feel that you're hiring a driver because you don't want to drive yourself, then it may not be approved. But if you're a person that, due to your disability status, is not able to drive themselves, then you definitely can count that as an IRWI. So yes, rural areas is a really good example of there just is not a public transportation system, so I have to have a driver to get from A to B.
Okay, that makes sense. And again,
you could also use it if you worked a shift that, at least you could try, if you worked a shift that maybe public transportation isn't available then. So let's say you live in an area that the bus stops at 10 o'clock, but you work a third shift. So there is no bus transportation at the hours that I particularly work as well.
Okay, perfect. Let me know if you have any other questions as we wrap up here. The rest were comments and participation with the quizzes and stuff like that, and just confirming. Oh, here, I've got another question. Does SS and SWITA, which I think is the Southwest Iowa Transit Authority, I think that is what it is, count as public transportation or specialized?
I honestly am not sure about that. My guess is it probably counts as public transportation. Typically what I mean by public, and it also could be how the transportation is provided. So if a person is using the public transportation system, but they're using a specialized service. So let's say someone was paying for a door-to-door service. We all know paratransit is extremely expensive, but let's say they did have a door-to-door service that had an additional cost that the person is using because of their disability barrier, then you could definitely claim that as an IRWI.
Right. Yeah, Kim, I think those do count then. But if you have more questions or got a specific scenario, just send that into Brian or I.
And if you would like a way, Social Security likes things very clean and informed, so I actually have an IRWI form that just what I'll do is I actually send it to you, and if you want to push it out to folks,
Perfect.
It's pretty straightforward and user-friendly on how to fill it out and how to submit it to Social Security. It looks almost a lot like a flex form that here's what I'm claiming for this month and here's the receipt for the money that I spent. But I will be more than happy to send that to Jessica and she can send it out to everyone. And if you have questions about it, please don't hesitate to ask me.
Perfect. Okay, I think that wraps up our questions for right now. But as Brian said, if you think of anything else or come across anything else related to today's topic, or you get thinking and you have some questions, just shoot those to Brian or I, and we'll try to get them answered. As Brian said, I'll be sure to send out his presentation, any tools or resources that he shares with me, and along with the recording of today's presentation. As soon as the webinar ends, a short survey is going to pop up. Please participate in that and answer a couple questions for me. I'd really appreciate it. Those help us as we move forward and kind of track how useful and effective we're being in the format. Thank you again, Brian, for all the great information and content today. I think you did a great job of providing folks a lot of that basic information they need to help dispel myths and reassure folks and provide hope, again, about the benefit of work and the impact of work on benefits, and again, that you can ideally make more money, right, and move out of poverty or close to poverty. We will be back in February, on February 19th, and Brian's going to be joining us again for part 2 of Building Financial Independence. We're going to focus more specifically on financial literacy and asset development. Brian mentioned past plans today. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk a little bit about iAble, as well as Iowa Able, and just some other resources out there to help individuals and families in their pursuit for financial literacy and asset development and moving out of poverty. So again, we'll see you February 9th. I'll send that stuff out along with today's stuff, and let me know if you need a certificate of attendance, and I'll get that to you as soon as I can. Thanks, everybody, and thanks again, Brian. See you in February.
Thank you.